Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in in a series that I've been reacting to, and it's been a while since we reacted to a video about the Pacific War. This video is actually made by Kings and Generals. Go check their channel out, and this video will be in the description down below. And I'll probably put the playlist of the whole series of Kings and General in the description down below so that you can check it out for yourself without my commentary. And here we have episode 9 of our reaction series here in our channel, and it's called Invasion of New Britain. And last episode we talked about the invasion of the Dutch East Indies, and it was a success. The Japanese got some important lands in the Dutch East Indies, or in modern day country, was it again, Indonesia. But now we're gonna react to this video, New Britain. And it's been a while, okay? It's been a while since we've reacted to a video about the Pacific War, and I'm kind of rusty, okay? It's been like 5 or 4 months since we've reacted to a World War II video, because in the past we've been reacting to mysteries and World War I. And I am not going to forget about this series. It's because, you know, this one I really am very invested on learning more about. And here we go, episode 9. Check out Kings and Generals channel in the description down below, and this video in the description down below. My god, it's been a while. I told them, check the volume. Let's go.
Last week, the Japanese had commenced their most important operation, the capture of the Dutch East Indies and the important resources that it harboured. Yet this week, they would also start a new operation for the invasion of the island of New Britain.
Okay, so if you the Dutch East Indies has a lot of resources, and they need those resources so that they can continue this war. And knowing that this is the year where the Netherlands was already taken by Germany in Europe, and this has been left here, like this massive colony, because their queen, as I remember, because I watched the episode 8 like yesterday, their queen, like their royal family, was exiled, and they were trying to help the Allies, and they were just left here, and there were some defenses. The defenses were starting to get very tough. But anyway, let's continue.
Further trying to interrupt the lines of communication between Australia and the US. As the invaders continue their advance across Borneo and the Celebes, a major breakthrough is achieved at Malaya and the Philippines. Join us as we delve into this critical point of the Pacific War.
I'm so sorry.
While there's plenty to say about the fighting on the front lines, there are stories from back home to be told too, and that's where the...
Alright, we're going to skip this. I'm so sorry. Anyway, it's Magellan TV. Anyway, let's go. Invasion of New Britain. Now is January 18 to 25, 1942. Okay.
Since the start of the war, Tokyo had acknowledged that the British presence in the island of New Britain was a huge threat to one of their most important naval bases in the Pacific, the Truk Atoll. In response, they planned Operation R, an invasion of Rabaul in New Britain.
Oh yeah, by the way, the operation in the Dutch East Indies was called Operation J. I don't know the Japanese word here. I don't know if this is Japanese. Anyway, now this is Operation R. Now that's very interesting. Alright, let's go.
And Kavieng in New Ireland. The South Seas Detachment of General Hori was earmarked to carry out Operation R after the occupation of Guam, supported by the main strength of Admiral Inouye's 4th Fleet. Due to the rapid progress across all theatres of the Pacific, back on January 4th, the Japanese had started to bombard Rabaul, the old capital of the Australian-controlled territory of New Guinea, in preparation for a naval invasion. 10 days later, the South Seas Detachment departed Truk, escorted by the 4th Fleet's main units. In Rabaul, the Australians had a garrison of around 1,400 soldiers, mainly from the 23rd Brigade, under the command of Colonel John Scanlon, while an independent company of 130 soldiers was also sent to Kavieng for the protection of the island of New Ireland. On January 20th, the 4th Fleet, including carriers Akagi and Kaga, sent over 100 aircraft, which attacked Rabaul in multiple waves. 8 riverways attacked, with 3 being shot down, 2 crash landing, and another damaged. The following
yeah, if you're wondering, New Britain in the map looks like it's in the, what you call that, part of, for me it is part of Papua New Guinea, or maybe it's from Fiji, I don't know, but for me it's in modern day, it's modern day in Papua New Guinea. Anyway, let's continue.
The following day, an Australian Catalina flying boat discovered the invasion fleet just off Kavieng and sent a warning to headquarters before being shot down. In response, Australian soldiers quickly took up positions and their aircraft were hastily evacuated to Lae. But before continuing with the invasion of Rabaul, we turn to Burma, where the first major Japanese operations were also taking place. At the start of the war, the 143rd Regiment of the 55th Division accomplished the first attacks against British Burma during the invasion of Thailand. Upon reaching the Kra River, which marked the Thai border, the Japanese soldiers had quickly occupied Victoria Point on December 14th of 1941. The British forces at Burma, under Lieutenant General Thomas Hutton, then tried to delay the Japanese by blowing up bridges connected to Thailand, but they could not stop the Japanese from launching probing raids on southern Tenasserim. At the same time, Commander-in-Chief in India, Sir Archibald Wavell, was negotiating with Chinese leader Chiang Kai-shek to aid them with the defense of the Burma Road, the last Chinese lifeline, as the British only counted with the 46th and 16th Indian Brigades and the 1st Burma Division for the defense of their Burmese colony. In early January, Hutton had placed the 2nd Burma Brigade and the 46th Indian Brigade at Tenasserim itself.
Alright, so before we continue, it's been a while since I've reacted to or learned about the Pacific War, and if you know some details about this part, Invasion of New Britain, comment down below, because I want to learn. And I've heard earlier that we have a placement test, and in around like July 24, so that's the reason why I'm making this video, because like me, I'm going to start studying like maybe tomorrow or maybe the next day. Anyway, let's continue. But comment down below anything that you know about this, like the invasion of New Britain, if you know. Okay, thank you.
With their headquarters at the city of Mulmine. The British plan consisted of keeping the Japanese forces as far away as possible from the port of Rangoon, through which most aid flowed towards the Burma Road and China.
That's important.
In turn, Brigadier John Smythe thought that Tenasserim was practically indefensible and they should retreat behind the Sitang River to establish more solid defensive positions, something that Hutton strongly opposed. This was to be a mistake, as on December 22nd, the 55th Division of Lieutenant General Ida Shojiro had assembled at Bangkok to prepare the invasion of Tenasserim. They would commence their
And if you're wondering, why aren't the Japanese attacking Thailand? Thailand at this time period was like almost a a puppet of Japan, or let's say a protectorate. So they're like the ones that are kind of neutral, but they're like the protectorate. So that's the reason why the Kingdom of Thailand, or Siam, is still here.
Advance on Moulmein on January 20th of 1942, heading from Raheng towards the Kokorijk Pass. By January 18th, the 143rd Regiment would also manage to overcome the steep, jungle-covered Tenasserim Range, then attacking Tavoy and overwhelming the 6th and 3rd Burma Rifles. The Japanese soldiers would next continue their advance on Megui, where the 2nd Burma Rifles were promptly evacuated before engaging the enemy. The occupation of Megui also saw some Burmese nationalists proclaim the creation of the Burma Independence Army, which would go on to...
Hold on. Burma Independence Army, led by Major General Wang San and Suzuki Keiichi. Some 227 Burmese nationalists joined the Japanese in their invasion of Burma. As the BIA entered its own country, the Burmese nationalists gained enormous support from the civilian population and were bolstered by thousands of volunteers.
To accompany Japanese forces in this campaign. On January 22nd.
Oh, so it's like they're gonna support the enemy. Okay, they're supporting the enemy. Okay.
The first clashes occurred at Kokorijk between the 16th Indian Brigade of the 17th Indian Division and forward units of the 55th Division. The Indian defenders managed to hold on to this position with great tenacity, but they would be eventually outflanked and forced to retreat after 2 days of resistance. Between January 23rd and 29th, the Japanese would make a determined effort to establish air superiority over Tenasserim and Rangoon, and on the night of January 30th, their main attack on Moulmein would begin as Japanese forces engaged the remainder of the 2nd Burma Brigade to the south and east of the city.
Oh, they're getting...
The invaders quickly managed to force a position on the left of a ridge.
Oh, they're getting the Burmese army, like, is this? Yeah, the Burmese army has like the Union Jack, like it's because it's a colony of the British in a way. They're getting surrounded by enemies, and there will be a struggle to escape. It's because at the back is just water. It's like a river. I don't know, is that sea or just a river? I don't know. Anyway, this is a river, so this might actually be like, I don't know, is this a sea or a river? I don't know. Anyway, let's continue.
And then continued to increase their pressure over the defenders throughout the next day. This position was almost impossible to defend, and the brigade was getting squeezed until Smythe finally ordered the retreat at the end of January 31st. The way to Rangoon was now open, but we'll have to wait some time to cover the main attack on Burma.
Oh, what's this? Anyway, now it's still far away, right? For the Allies to come back, like their comeback, it's still far away. It will be around 1944, 1943, or like maybe around
Meanwhile, in
1945.
Malaya, the situation was critical for the British defenders. On the coast, the Japanese had taken the town of Moa, annihilating the 45th Indian Brigade and opening a hole in West Force's defences. While to the north, the Australians had been pushed out of Gemas after losing much equipment. On January 17th, the retreating Allied units that managed to escape from Moa regrouped at Bakri and established a defensive perimeter around it. General Percival ordered them to recapture Moa, but the remaining...
The 45th Indian Brigade counterattacked. The 45th Indian Brigade Commander Brigadier Herbert Duncan led the three-pronged advance from Bakri to Moa, up the main road between the towns, from the jungle island and along the coastal road.
Indian soldiers fell into a Japanese ambush, suffering heavy casualties, and then decided to call off the counterattack. The next day, General Nishimura of the Imperial Guards Division started a three-pronged assault against the Allied positions, thus commencing the siege of Bakri.
They're gonna try to flank them. That is a smart attack. Anyway, let's be honest here. The fall of Malaya is very inevitable, and it's obvious, it's history. We already see what happened, but the fall of Malaya is is inevitable. It's because they have been getting pushed back from episode 8-7. They have been pushing. They were getting pushed back by the Japanese, and until they get to Singapore, now it will be a massive besiege. Was there a siege? I don't know. It's been a while since I've learned more, like study about the Pacific War. So yeah.
Yet the spearhead of the attack, composed of Type 95 Hago tanks, advanced without infantry support and were wiped out by Australian gunners. Despite their valiant resistance, employing an excellent tactic of moving one section at a time to enfilade the enemy positions, by January 19th, Bakri had been surrounded by the Japanese invaders, who then started a concentrated shelling of the area. At the same time, the 5th Division had been applying heavy pressure to Australian forces to the north, forcing them to retreat to Segamat by January 20th. Seeing the rapid progress of the Japanese on the coast, they would continue to retreat towards the town of Kluang, which they would reach on January 24th. In the meantime, a single Indian company was holding off an entire Japanese division, while the rest of the Allied forces...
Look at that, they are surrounded by enemies. It is like, it is hard. It is hard to beat that. Anyway.
Forces started to retreat towards Parit Silong on January 20th. Isolated, this company was cut off from the Allied retreat, getting almost completely annihilated by the enemy forces. Yet West Forces' retreat was also cut off by the Japanese, who managed to establish roadblocks 2 kilometers or so from Bakri.
They're getting
Several failed
by
assaults were executed to break through, until a bayonet charge, led by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Anderson, managed to break through the Japanese roadblock. Under heavy Japanese pressure, Anderson would then go on to lead the Allied forces on their withdrawal to Parit Silong. They arrived at the Palit Silong Bridge on January 22nd, but the bridge was already in Japanese hands, so Anderson would have to fight his way through it. Heroically, the Allied forces resisted tank attacks at their rear while launching continuous assaults against the bridge. Yet Anderson's efforts would be unsuccessful, and so he would decide to retreat northeast towards Yongpeng by January 23rd, leaving behind...
It is what it is. It's because they're getting surrounded, and imagine you are part of this division, this part here in Parit Silong. What is the best thing to do at this situation? It's just a miracle for them. It will be a miracle for them to get a breakthrough, but the only option is they were unsuccessful. So the only option was to retreat. Anyway, makes sense.
Behind substantial amounts of equipment and all their wounded men. These wounded men would be subjected to the same Japanese...
Yeah, you know, it's because... Okay, I'll stop. I'll pause it here again. You know, it's because Japanese... being captured by the Japanese is the worst than getting killed by Japanese. It's because the Japanese and the Imperial Japanese army were very brutal towards their captives. They tortured them. They torture them until they die, like torture them to death. They do a lot of brutal stuff, like more and more war crimes, and it was just pretty brutal. And for even towards the injured men, they killed them. They just straight up tortured them to death. So let's continue.
Retaliations that the latter had shown elsewhere during the war. After being harshly mistreated, the 150 wounded men would be subsequently...
Parit Silong Massacre, 1942, Imperial Guards Division event, 45th Indian Brigade. The Japanese killed many with machine guns, rifle blows, bayonets, some even lit on fire using petrol, apparently to remove war crime evidence. There was only a handful of survivors who escaped with the help of local Malays. That is just brutal. Oof, that is just brutal.
Subsequently executed.
If you were part of the people that successfully escaped from that, that was just lucky. You're just lucky.
During the Parit Sulong massacre. This was to be the end of the Battle of Muar, and afterwards West Force would establish positions on a line that extended from Mersing on the east coast through Kluang and then to Batu Pahat on the west coast, while preparing for a final retreat towards Singapore.
Yeah, they are so
now
close.
Now we turn
they
to
are
the
so
Dutch
close
East Indies,
Singapore,
where the 16th Army and the 3rd Fleet were preparing to resume their offensives in Borneo and the Celebes. After conducting mopping-up operations in Tarakan and Manado, the Japanese forces prepared to launch simultaneous attacks on Balikpapan and Kendari by the end of this week. Reinforced by units from Jolo, the Sakaguchi detachment departed Tarakan on January 21st, supported by Admiral Nishimura's fleet. Their plan was to have a battalion-sized unit secretly ascend the Wain River in front of the city of Balikpapan to advance deep into the rear of the city so that it could take control of its weak points in a swift surprise attack. Meanwhile, the Dutch garrison of Balikpapan numbered some 1,100 men, mainly from the 6th Battalion, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Cornelis van den Hogenbound. On January 18th, alerted of an incoming Japanese attack, the Dutch commander ordered the destruction of all oil installations in Balikpapan, trying to prevent their full employment by the enemy. On January 22nd, the Japanese invasion fleet was sighted by an American PBY, so the Dutch sent some Martin B-10 bombers and 12 F-2A Brewster Buffaloes to escort to attack the convoy, as well as some of their submarines.
The Battle of Balikpapan, Dutch force, supported by 9 Dutch B-10s, escorted by 20 F-2A Brewster Buffaloes, ships sunk Nanamaru transport ship.
By sinking the Nanamaru transport ship and damaging others while losing a single B-10, they could not prevent the landings of the Sakaguchi detachment by the early hours of January 24th. Without meeting any resistance, the main force of the Sakaguchi detachment quickly seized the Dutch airfield and then continued on towards Balikpapan. At the same time, an American task force sent by Admiral Hart was approaching the vicinity of the Dutch city. This task force, consisting of 4 destroyers, under the command of Rear Admiral William Glassford and Commander Paul Talbot, launched a strong attack against
What's this?
12.
Battle of Balikpapan, the Americans expended all their torpedoes, but with very few hits because of the as of yet unrealized problem with the Mark 15 torpedo running too deep. Ships sunk Koritake Maru, Naru Maru, and Tatsukami Maru, 4 transport ships.
Japanese transport ships, sinking 4 transports and damaging many more vessels. In return, 2 of the American destroyers only suffered light damage before retreating back to the sea. In the meantime, the surprise unit got to the mouth of the Wain River by early morning, beginning their ascent up the river. On the morning of January 25th, these soldiers got to the rear of the city, while the main force of the detachment reached the northern outskirts of Balikpapan.
Now Balikpapan, the local commander force is getting surrounded, and
the Dutch garrison had been taken completely by surprise, and by midday, the surprise unit advanced into Batu Ampar and defeated Hergenband's forces in battle. They would then join with the rest of the detachment to enter into the city of Balikpapan and capture the whole urban area. Mopping up operations began the next day, aimed against the town of Samarinda, while a battalion-sized detachment under Lieutenant Colonel Kume Motozo was created to seize the oil fields at Sanga Sanga. Simultaneous to the Battle of Balikpapan, Admiral Takagi's forces had left Bangka on January 21st, launching their attack on Kendari 3 days later. With the landings of the Sasebo force by early morning, the small Dutch garrison of 400 soldiers was caught off guard, and had to retreat to Mandongan after destroying as much of the Kendari II airfield as possible. Kendari and its airfield then fell by midday, while the Dutch forces retreated further back to Tawanga on the Coneweja River, from where they would start to execute guerrilla warfare. Due to intense rain making visibility poor, the next morning a happy accident happened for the Allies, as the destroyer Hatsuharu collided with the cruiser Nagara.
Oh, that's an incident. Kadari Harbor Incident, 1942. Hatsuharu destroyer Nagara heavy cruiser caused poor visibility due to heavy rain. Consequence invasion of Ambon was delayed by 1 day. So I forgot, was it really Ambon, or was that Ambon? I forgot what place was that, but the first paratrooper that the Japanese did was a success. So yeah, this might actually be, because now it's a heavy rain, so it makes sense because it's in Southeast Asia. Rains around like January is very common. It's very common right now. It's starting to it is starting to rain. It is starting to rain like these months around like June, July, August, October. It will be a El Nino. There we go. We call it El Nino. I don't know if it's El Nino or La Nina. Anyway, it's rain, or let's say heavy rains are very common, like even the Philippines. Anyway, let's continue.
The collision left them both with severe damage, so they had to sail back to Davao for repairs. Yet by January 25th, with the fall of Balikpapan and Kendari, the Japanese had achieved their next step in their plan of invasion for the Dutch East Indies, getting slowly but surely ever closer to the island of Java. But in the Philippines, the Americans had much bigger things to worry about. With the Abikay Line pierced and the 51st Division destroyed, General MacArthur had sent his last reserves to stop the Japanese advance before it was too late. In turn, General Nara of the 65th Independent Mixed Brigade decided to slice through the Abikay Line along the Abo-Abo River Valley, and although the Philippine scouts offered much resistance, they could hardly stop the advance of the Japanese 9th Regiment. Eventually, however, General Parker's efforts managed to pay off, as the American forces began to hold off their enemy in a series of attacks and counterattacks that lacked decisive action. Meanwhile, General Homma demanded more progress on the western sector, so he reinforced the 122nd Regiment there with the main force of the 16th Division, under the command of Major General Kimura Naoki. With Kimura now in charge of the western offensive, the Japanese forces started to push the 1st Division out of the Mauban Line by January 18th, while the main strength of the 16th Division broke through the apparently not impassable Mount Natib area and started to drive southwest of the Salanganan Ridge, with the objective of cutting off the Filipino defenders.
Trying to flank them?
By January 21st, the Mauban Line had been completely pierced, with Japanese soldiers enveloping the 1st Division and pushing towards the coast. Under more pressure, General Wainwright finally ordered the abandonment of the Mauban Line and a general retreat southwards. The following
in the Philippines too, the part of the, like in this part, like in the Pacific War, the Philippines, then the fall of the Philippines is very inevitable. It is getting too close to Bataan, and we all know what happened in Bataan. If you don't know, it will be in a future video. Anyway.
The following day, Nara started a massive assault against the Abikay Line after a heavy bombardment of the American positions, forcing the defenders to slowly commence to retreat. In the end, the deteriorating situation at the Mauban Line also forced MacArthur to pull all remaining units from the Abikay Line. On January 23rd, the gradual retreat towards the new Bagak-Orion Line thus commenced, being successfully completed by January 26th. Now we finally get back to New Ireland, where around 400 SNLF Marines landed on the morning of January 22nd, quickly taking the main town of Kavieng and engaging the small force of Australian commandos. After a fierce struggle, the defenders would have to withdraw towards the Suk River, where they would start guerrilla warfare operations. The following day, the bulk of the South Seas detachment landed at several points on the beaches of the Rabaul area, capturing many batteries and some minor airfields. In response, Colonel Scanlon ordered the destruction of military facilities and a general withdrawal from the town of Rabaul. Yet the Australian units had already been engaged by General Hori's forces, so the defenders would split into small groups that managed to retreat through the jungles by January 24th, then starting to execute guerrilla warfare. By this point, the Japanese had occupied Rabaul and were preparing to begin mopping up operations up to Lassell Bay. The Japanese would also execute mopping up operations in New Ireland until January 24th, then sweeping through Namatanai.
Surrender now. You can find either food nor way of escape in this island, and you will only die of hunger unless you surrender.
And its neighboring islands for 4 days straight. Luckily for the Japanese, the military facilities and airfields at Rabaul were quickly repaired, with Rabaul becoming the biggest Japanese base in the New Guinea region. The success of this operation, as well as the victories at Batan, Moa, Balikpapan, Kendari and Tenasserim, continued the triumphant trend.
So yeah, now the Japanese now has a massive base in New Britain, and they can now track the Allies, or even cut them off, like cut Australia off, cut Australia's communication with America. But they still have a lot to take, so it is still very early. It's episode 9 of this series, and me looking at the playlist, it's a lot. There's a lot of episodes, so let's continue.
The Japanese had been enjoying. Yet this was only the beginning, as next week the Japanese would continue their advance across the Philippines, Malaya and the Dutch East Indies, getting ever nearer to the final objectives of their respective campaigns. We will continue releasing weekly episodes on the Pacific War, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our video.
Anyway, we're gonna end it here. Oh my goodness, 30 minutes. It's been a while since I've recorded a video that long. Anyway, next episode, it will be the fall of Malaya. And we all know it is modern day Malaysia. And as I've said earlier, it's pretty obvious that the fall of Malaya is very inevitable. The Japanese were pushing back the Australian forces, the Indian forces, and even the British forces. They have successfully, in this episode, they successfully taken Malaya, and we still have a lot of episodes. We have 94, so that means we're still in episode 9. So we have a lot of episodes, and it's like episode 86. Wow. I am very, very sorry for being so inconsistent with this series, but if you're wondering, yes, we're reacting to every episode. I am very, very sorry if this is copyrighted, but I just love to learn more about Pacific War. So yeah, episode 10, Fall of Malaya. Episode 11, Battle of Makassar Strait. And in episode 12, we might see the fall of Singapore. And in episode 13, Japanese invasion of Sumatra. Next is the invasion of Timor. Next, and then the fall of Java. So we're still in the region of Malaysia, or let's say region in the Dutch East Indies. And by looking at it, yeah, we still have a lot. So thank you for watching, and I'm very, very excited for this part. Hideki Tojo bringing Japan into the war. I just want to learn more about that man. So yeah, folks, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe to more videos like this, and if you want me to continue this, you know what you can do. Subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time. Bye.